Welcome everybody. We're here with Tim Westergren, the founder of Pandora, in their offices in Oakland, California. Thank you, Tim, for taking the time to share your wisdom with everybody at AutoCon 2013.
My pleasure. I wish I could be in Las Vegas right now, but we'll have to settle for downtown Oakland.
Cool. You know, before we get into anything advertising, I wanted to ask you to share with everybody what inspired Pandora, or maybe share with us some of the lessons that you learned as an entrepreneur, because many of the people that are here at this conference are entrepreneurs, and we'd love to hear, you know, how Pandora started and what you learned.
Sure. Well, I'm a musician, so before I founded this company, I spent a lot of years trying to make a living as an artist. Initially playing in rock bands for a long time, writing music and touring around the country, and sort of being part of this enormous sea of working artists. That was the first piece, and then I was a film composer for a while. So I spent a lot of time writing scores for advertising as well as feature films. And the idea for Pandora really grew out of those two experiences. So on the one hand, being aware of and around a lot of really talented artists that no one had ever heard, that were all sort of struggling in obscurity, and sort of knowing about all this great talent out there. And as a film composer, spending all my time thinking about kind of the construction of music, you know, how it works, why people like what they like, and sort of the musicology, the taxonomy of music. And I had the idea one day to sort of marry musicology and mathematics to build what I initially thought would be a recommendation engine, which we call the Music Genome Project. And the idea was really codify the sort of the attributes of music into this enormous database, and then by marrying an algorithm to it, connect one song to another, a song that you knew well to one you'd never heard before, to help people discover all this great music they didn't know about. So it really came from, you know, my experiences as a musician and hoping I could harness technology to sort of change the musical ecosystem.
That's wild. Well, it worked. It worked. I mean, as an avid Pandora user, I think I'm more excited to hear the songs that I don't know, not the ones that I already know.
Well, I guess, you know, everybody faces that problem. We all love music, and as you get older, you know, time gets more scarce, and radio's not really playing your music anymore. It's playing music for folks younger than you are, and you don't have time to go out to the record store, you know, hang out with your buddies, listen to records, but you still love it. You still have the time. So I think that's one thing Pandora does particularly well, is, you know, helps you rediscover stuff.
Wow. Well, you know, it's easy to have an idea sometimes. I think the hard part is to execute. So between this idea that you had as a musician and where we are today in these incredible offices, where you've really reinvented how audiences connect with new artists, and how existing and new artists connect with audiences. But pioneering any industry can't be easy. So what are some of the things that you experienced and learned through that journey? Yeah,
well, it's been a long, winding road, for sure. I launched the company in 2000, so right at the first sort of apex of the big .com bubble. So we rode that down and spent years really struggling to survive, essentially. When we built our core technology, but we couldn't turn it into a business, and so we made a lot of sacrifice. There were about 50 people that worked without salary for, you know, about 2.5 years to build this. And we kind of experimented with different business plans, and we were catering to online retailers as a technology licensor. We built in-store kiosks in conjunction with IBM and NCR, and over time kind of wound our way into radio, realizing eventually that the best use of this personalization technology was in personalizing radio playlists, which we launched in 2005, so about 5 years after we'd actually founded the company. And when we launched it, it just took off like a rocket ship. I mean, we grew very quickly right away, because I think we went from having really lousy timing to great timing. Because when Pandora came out with this personalized radio offering, there was really nothing quite like it on the web. And sort of broadband connectivity had grown enough that work could really be widely distributed. So we went from bad timing to great timing. And since then, we've kind of been hanging on for dear life as it's grown, faster than we could ever imagine. And gosh, we went through a lot. Had to really learn, had to survive when nobody thought we would. I think there was a group of people at Pandora that just believed that one way or another we were going to find our way across the chasm. And I doubted for a long time myself, but I think if you have a good idea and you have tenacity, you can eventually get it somewhere.
Yeah, belief is amazing. And I know a lot of the people that may be watching this video may or may not have an opportunity to reinvent music consumption, but they're all trying in their own way to reinvent themselves, to reinvent their businesses, or whatever area of focus that they can influence. In that process, what are some things that you learned in this journey, now looking back, that you could share with them? One thing that you just mentioned was, when you believe, you can't quit and persevere. Any other lessons learned that through your experience that could be relevant to others that are? Yeah,
well, I think I learned a lot of lessons. I think, the first and foremost, I think you have to be a constant learner. Things are changing so rapidly. You have to be very careful about thinking you have the answer to things. And that's a combination of surrounding yourself with other smart people, folks that know things you don't know, really embracing teams in this, and also being willing to change direction. I think music is one of the many industries that's going through an enormous transformation. I think 3 to 5 years from now, people won't recognize it from the industry it is today. And I think that we were nimble. We didn't have any kind of religion around how we wanted to do this, what the right answer was. We kind of reacted and responded to the sort of externalities around us. I think, though, within that, it's really important to have a very clear mission. To have a mission and kind of a set of values that are associated with that. And I think that's stood Pandora in good stead over the years. Even as we've vacillated and zigzagged through multiple businesses, the underlying purpose of this whole thing, the reason we started this, has not changed, which is two things. It's helping people discover and enjoy music they love, and helping artists connect with their audiences. And that's been our primary motivation. We just had to figure out how to do that. And that's been unwavering. So I think that now we're north of 1,000 employees at Pandora, and we're over 1,000 devices, and we're in 30 markets around the US, and it's completely different cosmetically than it was years ago. But I think if you walked around the company and asked people why we're doing this, they'd all give pretty much the same answer.
That's great. So while you have to adapt and change, and be humble and hungry to always learn and grow and improve, the one constant has been the mission, and assembling a group of mission-driven people that, whether they're willing to work for free, like some of the founding fathers of the 50 or whatever, or work late, come early, do whatever it takes, it's the mission that's the flame that keeps hopefully their excitement above the challenges.
And you said humility is a really key word. You mentioned that. I think that's, in some ways, that's part and parcel of being a good learner. You have to be humble. We all have to be humble. That's a generally good characteristic, I think, but especially if you're in a fast-paced, complicated business environment, you have to have the humility to know you don't know the answers. And the humility to embrace the help you need from others. I think that makes you wiser, makes you more effective, and people like working for humble leaders. So, I think as I look around over these years, many people I've met that have sort of been entrepreneurs that are running businesses now, the ones that are most successful, by and large, have good control on their ego. They're humble people fundamentally. As much success as they've had, it never gets to their head. And so they don't get trapped inside their own brain, you know. They're always looking around, always listening, always learning, and you know, the great entrepreneurs are just, they just never stop doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think you've worked in the automotive industry that much, but I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, without question, it's the ones that really, because the mission matters more than what credit they get, or because that's all empty, you know. You had mentioned just surrounding yourself with really smart people. Everybody, whether it's a small business or a huge business, are trying to find a formula to find the right people.
Yeah.
And once you find them, how to develop them and retain them. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, boy, you know, it's an art form. It's definitely not a science. I think that the first thing as an entrepreneur is to find complementarity. So find people around you that are good at things you're not good at, and that complement you in other ways as a person, etc. So that together you occupy different spaces, so you fit well. I think that's the first piece. Second piece is when you bring those people in, give them genuine ownership of the company. It's not your company, it's yours collectively. Make them owners substantively and also just in terms of their actual control and influence over the business. Embrace that. Don't shield yourself from other people. Really kind of open up to that. And I think obviously reward and empower people as they progress in the business in all the ways that you can, whether it's in responsibility within the organization, in validation internally and externally, share credit, share the spotlight, really be generous with that. I think, again, the great entrepreneurs I know, the leaders I know, are very, very generous with sort of credit and ownership, etc. And be ruthless about people who aren't cutting it. I think that it's easy to make the mistake where you bring people in and the ones who aren't really shouldn't be there, you leave them in too long. If they don't meet your standards, you gotta get them out, because that not only slows you down, it affects everybody in the organization. So, you know, demand high standards for everybody, including yourself, and, you know, be ruthless about it.
I mean, that's a weekness of mine.
Many people have that.
I have such a weakness there because, you know, you get to know people personally, and I guess my aunt would always tell me the best thing to do is to help them find a job that's in line with their passion, their skills, because they know they're not cutting it.
You're not doing any favors by keeping them on too long.
Very insightful. I'm guilty as charged. Was that for me? But you mentioned the humble leaders are usually the ones that are most successful, the ones that you respect. Who are some leaders that you really, or entrepreneurs that you've respected, and what is it about them that you respect?
I think one of the real strong leaders is Jeff Bezos at Amazon. I think that he embodies a lot of that. I think that obviously very clear mission. He's had it from day one. Pursued it in the face of an army of doubters, but really stuck true to it, and it remains the cornerstone. He's a very humble guy. If you meet him, he's a very unassuming, very smart, but a low ego, a human being, and I think that he has led that brand over many years and maintained its quality and its caliber. And I mean, he's a tough businessman, but I think he has a lot of those great leadership qualities. Our CEO is leaving now, he's transitioning out. Joe Kennedy, another, I think, great example of that. Very low on the ego, and was instrumental in moving our company in this direction, but kind of led from the rear, you know, and let everybody do their thing. I think he was really about finding great athletes and then making them as good as possible. So I've had a chance to, you know, kind of learn from him.
That's neat.
You don't micromanage them. You give them a job to do and then goals, and you let them pursue that how they'd like. Give them latitude to do it and empower them to do it. And I've really come to understand how in a workplace environment, I think it's all about creating an environment where people will thrive. not going in and grabbing them by the shoulders and moving them around and micromanaging them, but really kind of giving them the opportunity to realize their potential, and he's very good at that. It's the kind of leader that manages just on the edges, you know, as you're going down, but really kind of lets you thrive. And if you're not the right guy for the job, as we talked about earlier, find a different place for you. But I've learned that as a really healthy environment.
Wow. If you can, tell us a little bit about how Pandora is helping automotive advertisers reach those in-market consumers through the platform, and how it's working for them.
Yeah, so it's been a really great category for us because car dealers have been long-standing buyers of broadcast radio, but they've been limited to a medium that does not allow any form of targeting. And so we have obviously spent a lot of time meeting with local car dealers. And the big conceptual shift they've got to make is to understand that unlike broadcast radio, where you have one signal being broadcast out to hundreds of thousands of people or more simultaneously, we deliver our streams one-to-one. We call it unicasting. So you can actually very much control who gets your message and which message they get, and you can sort of triage that audience based on who is a higher likelihood of buying a car. So advertisers on Pandora will typically run a campaign where they'll say, okay, I want to reach men 24 to 39 within 5 miles of my dealership, and listening to, you know, country music. And they'll do one form of media for them, and then pick a different demo and do a different form of media for them. And it's all trackable. So you deliver that ad, does the person then interact with it? Do they click on something? Do they call the tap to call function on the smartphone? So you can really not only determine who gets your ad and track that, you can also track the response. So we're seeing just hundreds of really, you know, increasingly creative and interesting campaigns coming out of dealers, because, you know, I will say that although dealers, you know, are selling cars that have been around for a long time, have been buying traditional media for a long time, they're some of the most innovative thinkers. Once they get their hands on this new medium, they bring a lot of ideas to bear.
Yeah, and I mean, with those ingredients in the kitchen,
yeah,
you can make up a lot of stuff. So what you're saying is they're able to segment different customers, right, and give in-market customers different messages based on their age and really what vehicles they may be interested in.
Precisely.
And even give that message in the style that is the most attractive to them, whether it be, you know, selling trucks to people who love country music, exactly, in their own language, or if you're targeting, you know, 20-somethings for a starter, you know, coupe, having maybe different music, exactly, messaging that appeals to them. Exactly. Really, really interesting. What are some things that you can do on Pandora as a platform that you can't, other things you can't do on radio?
Well, so again, you're interacting with an individual as they utilize Pandora. So aside from targeting them, you can contextually deliver ads. So let's say you're listening to a station on Pandora and you thumb up a song. You could have a campaign that says, oh, you like that song, you might like the new car that we're coming out with. Someone pauses a station, oh, taking a break? Why don't you go, you know, go down to the local dealer and check out a car. You can kind of talk to them in the context that they're experiencing on Pandora. And the more you do that, I think the more responsive you find people. And keeping in mind that this is a personal environment for someone, so they're listening to what's going on. They're tuned into it. And it's why we have such high engagement rates, that sort of level of click-throughs and interactivity and recall, et cetera, for campaigns on Pandora is so much higher than other media, because you're kind of like in someone's CD changer, or you're in their living room, you know, really, really there with them. Especially
because when you do use Pandora as a consumer, and there's ads, there's far less ads.
Yeah.
And the rules that you've established, there's far less ads than with radio. A lot of people don't realize that you not only deliver radio ads, but you also deliver video ads. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there are multiple media you can use on Pandora. People think about it as an auditory experience, which obviously it is by and large, but people are also constantly interacting with it. So they may have a smartphone in their pocket, but they're going to take it out, and on average about 7 or 8 times an hour, a listener on Pandora goes to Pandora to do something. So they'll skip a song, thumb up a song, or they've heard a song they never heard before, they want to go find out who it is. And so they engage with the screen. And we take advantage of those engagements to put up ads. So the visual part of Pandora, which is graphic or it's video, happens only when you're actually engaged with the device. So let's say you switch from one station to another, we'll insert a little video ad in there. It's kind of an interstitial video ad. So again, you have their engagement, you're essentially guaranteed that they're watching it, and you can measure the interactivity.
Okay, so in summary, unlike radio or TV, you can be targeted to people that have a higher probability of wanting to do business with you through geographic, psychographic, demographic, and more. Second, you can deliver a more personalized message based on the different segmentations of who those customers are, and even contextual messages based on the activities that they're taking. Like if they're liking a song or changing stations, you can invite them to consider changing cars, which creates a wit about the advertising. But then also the medium is obviously different. One, that it's completely measurable, everything they do. And if they do like what they hear, they can convert on the spot. They can click to convert. And in the end, you can measure to see what's working, what's not, and obviously spend more with what works.
And we have a very, very high repeat rate because folks who spend money on here get a return on it. Simple as that.
That's great. Well, you know, we know that you're very busy today with everything you've got planned. Really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your experience and wisdom with everyone at AutoCon.
Yeah.
It was an honor for me to be able to spend that time with you.
My pleasure, and hello to everybody in Las Vegas. Sorry I couldn't be there, but I hope you all have a wonderful conference, and thanks for having me on.
Great.
Thanks, Sean.
Really appreciate it, brother. So, back to, I guess, me.